Welcome to the Surrogates Corner.
Hello and welcome to the Surrogates Corner with James Mahan. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. Thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk to James about why he created his firm and why the surrogacy process is very important to him. James, so good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about an industry and a field that I care a lot about and really excited to be a part of.
I'm excited to learn about it. I admittedly don't know a ton about it, so I'm excited to get your insight. So let's start with your journey. Can you just kind of tell us what led you to create the Surrogates Corner?
Kind of uniquely grew up in a legal family. That itself is not unique, but my parents back in the 90s were doing surrogacy when it just first got started. So when IVF was just starting to take off, we were still doing what's called traditional surrogacy, which means the surrogate mom was actually the egg donor at the same time. That created a little bit more complications for how we handle things legalistically because she's kind of giving up her baby at that point. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of things that were awesome about that. I mean, it was kind of the wild, wild west in terms of what was happening, different things occurring in different parts of the country, but it was super exciting to see. I mean, I kind of grew up knowing that some women were carrying babies that eventually belonged to other people. And that was, from my perspective, normal and cool and exciting. And so when I kind of came into sort of my mature years, was debating between going to law school and medical school. I really liked orthopedic surgery because I got injured a whole bunch of times playing stuff in high school. And then also just really enjoyed seeing the legal side of what my parents were doing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, when I went to college, 9/11 happened my sophomore year. So I transferred to the Naval Academy, did naval service for about 8 years, and then got out and went to law school. But when I went to law school, I knew that this is the area in the field I wanted to get into. I jokingly call it warm, fuzzy law. Part of that is just because a lot of legal work is, especially on the contract side, is very transactional. It's comma placements, it's numbers, it's kind of dispute resolution. Whereas this area, most people get into it because they know what they want. Both sides are trying to achieve the same goal. Mm-hmm. And being able to be a part of that was fun, exciting, and made me feel good about what I was doing in the legal field. As far as the Surrogates Corner itself, I started off my legal practice working in my parents' firm and working with mostly intended parents. So I did a lot of drafting and everything else related to their contracts and parentage orders. On the legal side, and when things happen correctly, right, both the surrogate and the intended parents have their own attorney. They go off of one contract, usually drafted by the intended parent's attorney, but the surrogate is kind of being told what they're agreeing to, what's in there, what the compensation will look like or not. And a lot of times, you know, the legal side of the coin is usually better for the lawyers if you're working with intended parents. A lot of the field is geared towards intended parents because they're the ones who are trying to have the babies. So, you know, the clinics, the agencies, the lawyers are kind of really aimed at getting intended parent clients. The surrogates, who generally do all the work for that, you know, are not, it's not that it's an afterthought or anything else, but a lot of times they're kind of just paired up with an attorney. They go through a contract. They know that it's not going to be their baby, so they're not, you know, thinking about keeping the baby or not. But I felt, and I saw cases where surrogates would kind of do the contract, and then they're in the middle of the pregnancy, something goes wrong, or there's a sideways issue, or things were not anticipated that were going to happen. And a lot of times those surrogates don't wind up having continuous legal help all the way through the process because that's just not how it's structured. So they would find themselves kind of alone and adrift and wondering like, well, who do I turn to when things are going strange, or I'm not agreeing with the IPs, or we have a conflict? The agency, and most of them are incredible and do great work, but they're meant to play the middle person. Like they are designed to benefit the match, almost like a neutral for the arrangement. The surrogate doesn't necessarily have someone that they can go to and say, well, what's just best for me? What should I be thinking of, or what should I be considering as to what we agree to do in this situation or not? And that's where I kind of said, that is an area where I think I love this side of the law. I love what I get to do. I think that surrogates are just incredible people for what they're willing to offer intended parents, the chance to have children. And so being able to be someone that they knew, I can go to James whenever I need to. I can ask questions about whatever's going on. I'm going to get the help I need when I need it. That was kind of the impetus behind the Surrogates Corner, is I wanted them to feel like if things do go strange, just like in a boxing ring, you can go back to your corner and get advice from your coach, your kind of confidant, your counselor as to what you should do, really just looking at what's for best for you. And so I created that about 3 years ago. I've loved it. Got to work with surrogates all across the country. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience. I get to meet a bunch of different agencies and everything else and see a bunch of different packages. So there's a lot there that I really enjoy doing. And like I said, it just makes me feel really good about the job that I get to do for these incredible women.
I thought it was interesting the way you said, what was it, warm fuzzy law? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that because you're right. I mean, so much of law is paperwork. It's conflict resolution. It's negative, a lot of negative connotations to a lot of different situations. Someone hurt somebody else or something, you know, and that's how that all goes. So I like warm fuzzy law. That sounds like a more pleasant area to be in.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, especially with contracts, like for a lot of people, unless you purchase a home or whatever else, you're not going to have probably entered into a 30, 40, 50, sometimes 60-page contract like these surrogates are being asked to do, you know, sometimes at 22, 24, 28 years old. And that's a lot of information to take in, a lot of things that are, I mean, it's not as legalistic as like an M&A kind of transaction.
Sure.
There's a lot in there that's important, but usually people go to lawyers because things are going wrong and they need to kind of lawyer up or protect themselves. This industry is kind of the flip of that. The vast majority of the times we're at lawyers just to kind of make sure that everything happens the way we all want it to. And that's why, I mean, the warm fuzzy law is like, we help people have kids. So a lot of times at the end of the day, people are sharing Christmas cards with each other. I have surrogates who come back and do a sibling journey for the same intended parents because they just love working with them. There's a lot to feel good about, not like, oh, I stuck it to that person and I got, the most out of them for my client and they, are the least off. Like it's not a zero-sum game. It really is, a positive pie where everyone can benefit as long as we sort of do things correctly. And that part of it makes it, just enjoyable and fun and just a pleasure to be a part of.
Yeah. And a good point on that. So many of these women are very young and
right.
We all remember what we were like when we were 22, 23, 24, and we didn't have a real good understanding of the world. So, that's a really, really excellent point. How do medical and legal challenges sort of intersect in surrogacy, and why are people often unaware of the legal ramifications?
Yeah. So one of the funny parts is that not most people, but a lot of people get into these processes or these journeys, not really being aware they're going to have to encounter attorneys at all. Because it usually starts off as a medical question, like, I need help. I can't conceive for whatever reason, whether it's biology, whether it's, gender preference or whatever, same-sex relationships. Like there's a lot of stuff that kind of starts on the medical side of, well, do you need an egg donor or a sperm donor? Do you need a surrogate to carry for you? Can you carry yourself? And it's not until they kind of get to the point where they say you either, need donated material or you need somebody to carry the baby for you, that the doctors say, okay, great, we're going to go down that route. You need to go talk to lawyers now and make sure that arrangement's going to work. So, a lot of the surrogates that I work with will sign up either with agencies, or we can talk about this a little later, but there's two main tracks of journeys. You either go through an agency or you do an independent match. Either way, you're going to get paired with a set of intended parents and then decide what you're going to do moving forward. It's just that the agencies tend to have set structure packages. They kind of do the insurance, a lot of other stuff for you, and handle a lot of the kind of the nitty gritty stuff on the detail side. But, in terms of what we're getting into for the contract, a lot of times, there's a lot in there about what we're agreeing to do, what we agree not to do, where we can go, who gets to make certain decisions. And a lot of that, is important to just relay to these girls. And so I jokingly say that, part of my job is, in addition to being a lawyer, is really as an educator. Like at this stage, at least at the beginning, we're helping the surrogates understand and comprehend kind of what they're ultimately agreeing to do, with the hope that everything happens smoothly. But if it doesn't, like I said, I'm still there. I tell my surrogates, like, I fade in the background, but I'm just in your corner. So if you need me, you come right back to me and I'm happy to help you with whatever's going on. Because occasionally those things do happen. And that's when, like I said, you really want to know that you have legal help in your corner at that point in time when you actually need it.
Yeah, educator, that's true, because it's such a specific niche of law. Not everybody knows the stuff that you know about how this process works. And when if you're a young woman kind of going in like maybe a little bit blind, at least not sure about all of the different aspects of it, you probably have a lot of coaching to do in that process.
Yeah. And like I said, because usually ASRM, they're like the governing body medically for stuff that happens in the surrogacy field. Their general range is, say, most surrogates should be between 21 and 42 or 43 is kind of the general group. I get a lot of surrogates who are in the bottom portion of that range, the 21 to 30 kind of time period. They've had their own pregnancies, their own children, they have their own lives. They do this and they want to be pregnant, they enjoy it. But like I said, the contract is something that's kind of new to everybody, both the parents and the surrogate. But a lot of times, it starts off with kind of, again, looking at, well, what do the parents sort of want, or what are they kind of hoping the surrogate's going to do? And a lot of it sort of generically sounds straightforward. I mean, I often kind of chuckle when my surrogate's like, oh yeah, the surrogate seems the contract seems pretty straightforward. I get it. Because the big picture stuff is obvious. Like, I'm going to get pregnant. It's not going to be my baby. I'm not responsible for it when it's born. It's going to go to the intended parents. Sure. A, B, C, D, check, we're done.
Right.
It's all the little stuff in between there. Like, are you going to be able to travel? Do you have to go to certain places that you might want to go during the pregnancy? Who has to approve those things? who makes certain decisions about testing we do. It's easy to overlook. And that's why I said, like, I think of myself as educator to say, here's all the other stuff outside of the big, A, B, C, D things that we're taking care of that we're also agreeing to, that I want to make sure they're aware of, or that we can tweak if we need to, or modify if that's what's required.
What are some of the most common misconceptions about the legal side of surrogacy?
So the big thing that has happened for a long time is kind of stems from one of the early cases that went nationally haywire with surrogacy. So there was a case of a surrogate who was the biological mother of the child, because she was also the egg donor, who basically changed her mind and fled New Jersey and went down to Florida with the baby. And this freaked everybody out, because now it's like, well, what do we do? How do we handle this? What if, at that point, the surrogate was technically the biological mother. And so there was a lot of, back and forth as to, well, can we take her baby away that she's changed her mind to and give it to the parents?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why New York, New York didn't have surrogacy for about 35 years after that, because they were still dealing with the ramifications of kind of that just tragic event that occurred. So one of the big misconceptions is that the surrogate wants to keep the baby. Nowadays with IVF and with sometimes we don't even really call them surrogate mothers anymore. We kind of even have moved away from saying surrogate. We like to say gestational carrier, because it sort of just removes the idea that they have a parental role in the child's life, which makes sense for naming, complexities and stuff.
Sure.
But, one of the big concerns is, what if my surrogate wants to keep my baby? Luckily, when you go through agencies, you're going to deal with surrogates who are vetted, who've been kind of mentally screened, medically screened, have gone through the process. They know what they're getting themselves into. None of my surrogates want to keep this child. It's not their genetic child anyway. But that's just kind of the big concern, is what do I do if that happens? That one, luckily, is fading a little bit. Now, the big one and the hardest part with these surrogacy contracts is that the contract is great, but it's just a framework. There's so much trust and kind of faith built into these arrangements, because many of the surrogates are not anywhere local to the intended parents. So they're gestating their child hundreds, thousands, multiple thousands of miles away from the intended parents. And the big concern the parents have is like, how do I give up that control, right? I mean, they got this stage because they're desiring to have a baby, to either build their family, to expand it, or to have that first child. It's really hard for parents to say, like, I'm going to entrust my child and its future kind of ramifications with that to someone hundreds, thousands of miles away that I can't keep track of, that I can't keep tabs on, that I don't know for sure what they are or not doing. And that's where the contract tries to kind of create some of those boundaries and some of those lanes as to what we're going to do and who makes certain decisions, all of which are, again, designed to benefit everybody in the process. But the one troubled part is you get some people who want to micromanage the pregnancy, who want to be involved in every single type of decision, who want everything to run through them for approval purposes. That's really hard to do. And sometimes identifying those matches and making sure that both sides are kind of ready for the issues that may come up with that is important to kind of think about.
So you spent, would you say 6 years in the Navy, 8 years in the Navy?
Yeah. So 8 years on active duty on submarines, and then teaching. Yep.
Wow. How does that background, in addition to your experience in law, kind of influence your approach to advocacy in this field?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I was in college when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
I've always considered myself like, a red-blooded patriotic American. My dad served in the military. My uncle served in the military. So the idea, I was maybe going to go into Navy medicine when I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I wound up doing something else and doing submarines, which is, not a quote unquote dangerous field. Like, we're not doing, it's not like the Soviet era where we're kind of going after Russian subs and stuff. So we're not being shot at, anything like that. We're a very technical field that's designed to kind of go out and monitor and keep track of things and see what's happening. And I always felt that was important for me, because I wanted to give back to a country that I feel has been fantastic to me. And although not perfect by any stretch of the means, is still, hopefully a beacon of hope, or is able to kind of, function as that in the world we live in today, although it's very chaotic. But the idea of serving the nation in a way that not everybody has to pay for it or be responsible for it. Like, national defense is not individual. Like, we are there to take care of the nation, regardless of whether you pay no taxes, a little bit of taxes, a ton of taxes. Like, your safety and the concern that we have for you doesn't change really based off of your individualistic, geographic, demographic kind of purposes. So being able to serve the country and the people of the United States was a big thing for me, especially in my 20s and 30s. And now I kind of view that in the same way as to what I look at and how I view my surrogates. Like I said, I think that they are, and I tell them it's in every review, like, you are rock stars and incredible people for what you're willing and potentially able to try to do for these other families.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do this. You're not being forced to do it. you're just choosing to carry a baby for somebody else so that they can have their own family. Like, what an incredible blessing and gift that these women provide to these families. And I want them to know that they have someone, and you'll see this on my website. Like I said, it's dedicated to serving surrogates donors. Like, I view them as I am serving them. It's not that they have the benefit or the pleasure of working with me. I look at it as I get to help them understand what they're getting into and be there for them when they actually need it. So the parallels between military service and kind of what I do now and how I view that and why I do it is very similar. And it's also just like, I was in the military and in the Navy because I believed in the cause, I believed in the purpose, and I feel the same way about my surrogates. Like I think that providing people the opportunity to have kids is one of the great equalizers in life, and the ability for other women to do that for people that they sometimes don't know, may not know long term, is incredible. And being able to serve them in that mission is just so fun to be a part of.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they are rock stars. I mean, that's my wife and I, we have one child. We had a tough time having one child, but we were able to make it work. But, I've seen what it's like for someone to be really sad and not be able to do it themselves. And I've also watched someone go through pregnancy. It's not easy. So it's really impressive that these women are willing to do that for, like you said, for largely total strangers. How do surrogacy arrangements differ from sort of a traditional family building methods from a legal perspective?
One of the major changes is that most legal systems, and typically in the domestic United States, right, states have a presumption of parenthood when people either consensually engage in intercourse and have a child, when they're in a either legally binding marital domestic partnership relationship. There's a presumption that when those people have a baby together, that both of them are meant to be viewed as the parents. And that's true even nowadays, post-option, like with same-sex couples or other people who are building families. So even for my, on the donor side, I work with some lesbian couples where one of the wives will carry the baby. The other mother is seen as a co-parent and an equal parent to that baby when it's born because they are in a marital relationship. When you do a surrogacy, the problem is that some other woman is carrying a baby and delivering it, and then people just sort of expect, well, yeah, but the parents are going to take it home and they're going to name it and raise it and everything else, which is great. But the hospitals can't just let someone else walk out of the hospital with a baby that another woman delivered and not get sued. So the tricky part is we have to go through the process to make sure that, one, we know what we're doing getting into the arrangement and setting up the contractual, guidelines and boundaries for what the arrangement is going to look like. And then two, during the pregnancy, and this varies a little bit state by state, depending on when we can do it and how we do it, but we essentially go to the courts in that state, either where the baby was conceived or the embryo transfer occurred, or where the baby is going to be delivered. And we say, hey, judge, we have a surrogate who's pregnant. It's not her baby. It belongs to these people. We would like you to sign either usually a stipulated order or judgment, just letting everybody know that when she delivers the baby, it's going to belong to the intended parent or parents. Their name's on the birth certificate. They take the baby home. They name it. They raise it. And the surrogate has no legal obligations or role in the child's life post-delivery. So that part makes it very different from the standpoint of we have to go and get that kind of order. Surrogacy also is different from like your traditional IVF or instances where like if there's an intended mother or a woman who's going to carry the baby for her, for herself, once she delivers, like we just assume the baby belongs to her. Whether she uses an egg donor or sperm donor or donated embryo doesn't really matter on her side, because when she delivers the baby, we just naturally assume by law that she is the mother of that child. With surrogacy, we have to take those additional steps to say, hey, we have a, not a legal fiction, but we have a legal situation we have to codify and affirm for everybody, because especially for like international clients and everything else, like they need something from a court saying that, this baby that just was delivered, that clearly neither of the intended parents carried, actually belongs to them and they didn't run off with somebody else's child. So that's one of the major ways in which, the surrogacy process is very different on the legal side, because we have to get around and work through the fact that another woman who's not related, not connected, not in a relationship with a parent or parents is going to carry their baby and give it to them. And it's not an adoption. We're not taking her child away from her. She's not giving up the rights to her baby that she wants to keep or maybe doesn't want to keep. Like everybody knows it's the intended parent's child all along. And so there are just additional steps there that are important, but that's also one of the things that creates that kind of anxiety with people is like, what if she changes her mind? What if she decides she doesn't want to give me the baby? Again, most statutes and everything else will say that by contract, she's not allowed to, claim the baby's hers or whatever else. But that's still kind of just a natural fear that people have, because again, there's a trust factor when you give up that kind of control. It's hard to relinquish all the way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That definitely does. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the Surrogates Corner with James Mahan. I'm looking forward to more episodes beyond our first one here. If you want to get in touch with James, surrogatescorner.com is the way to do it. He's also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with everything we got going on. We're excited to bring you more episodes. James, great to talk with you. Looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.